This video is on measuring center, which basically means we are looking at mean, median, and mode. So these are three statistics that we use to measure the center of the data, which hopefully you've heard of them all before, and you should have done because it is part of grade 7, 8, and 9 curriculum. So just to be a really quick overview. So the mean, which we often represent with a variable with a line across the top, so there you can see we've got an X and a line over it, of a data set is the arithmetic average. And how we work it out is the sum of all the data values divided by however many data values there are. Now in orange here, you'll see the correct mathematical notation for writing out the mean. So you have the X with a line above it equals, now that big E means the sum of. Okay, so it's the Greek letter sigma, but in math it means the sum of. So it's the sum of all the X values divided by n, which is how many data values we have. The median is the middle of the ordered data set. So what we sometimes like to do is put all the data in order and then find the middle from there. And if there is n data, we can actually find the middle position. And to do that, we do the n plus 1, so however many data points we've got plus 1, divide that by 2, and that tells us the position of the middle. Now, if we have an even number of data, then our position of the middle will be between 2. So say if it was the 16th position, and that was between a 6 and a 7, the median would be 6.5. You have to find the middle of those two numbers either side of the median. The mode is the most common number in the data set. Now be aware, if there are two values which occur most frequently, then the data set is bimodal and there are two modes. Generally, if a data set has more than two modes, we do not use the mode as a measure of the center. So quite often, that also can depend on how big the data set is, but generally if there's more than two, we say there is no mode and we can't use it as a measure of center. Now we have an example here. So the number of small airplanes flying into a remote airstrip over a 15-day period is given below. For this data set, find the mean, median, and mode. So nice and easy. This hopefully will just be revision for all of you. So first of all, we're going to find the mean. So we have our formula, which is X with the line above it equals the sum of, so we use a sigma notation of X divided by N. Now to do this, we're going to add up all the values. So you'll have 5 plus 7 plus 0 plus 3 plus all the way down to the last one, which is plus 8. Divide that by how many there are. So if you add them all up, you'll see there are 15 data points, which will give us 66 over 15, which equals 4.4. So the mean is 4.4. Now, the median is the middle value. So what we can do is we can order them from smallest to largest. Now, what you may have done previously is work from the outside to the middle, which is fine. You can do that. The other thing is to find the position. So as I said before, we look at how many data points there are, which is 15, plus 1, and then divide that by 2, which will give us 8. So the median is in the 8th position, which we'll find is here. So the median is 4. And then for the mode, we just look for the most common number, and the most common number there is 4 as well, as it occurs 3 times, so the mode equals 4. Now what I'm going to actually show you what to do is how to do this on your calculator. So your graphic calculators can also calculate your mean and median. It can't do the mode for you, but it can do the mean and median, and I'm going to show you how to do that now. So on the calculator, when we're trying to do statistics, from your home page, what you need to do is you need to go to the green table box here. That is your list and spreadsheets button. So click that and it will open up a spreadsheet. Now from here, what you need to do is you actually need to enter all your data just in one column. So I've got the example there. So our data will be 5, 7, 0, 3, 4, 6, 4, 0, 5, 3, 6, 9, 4, 2, 8. From there, you're going to go to menu, number 4, which is statistics, number 1, stat calculations. Now we've only got one variable of data, so we're going to go to the top one variable statistics. Number of lists we only have one list, so just click OK. Now in here, we have to input where we're going to get the data from. So the X1 list, it's got A and then square brackets. That means it's going to get the data from column A, which is what we want. You can name the column. I just like to leave it with the square brackets. I just find it easier. and we leave everything else as it is, and then we just make sure our result isn't going to go into in the A column, otherwise it will overwrite our data. So you see here it's going to B column, so that's all good. Click OK, and it brings up our data. So if we just go up to the top, you see here, our first one, you've got X bar, which is your mean, was 4.4. Now if we look back at the example, we found that our mean was 4.4. It also gives us some more information. So the next one down is the sum of all the X values, which was 66, which we also calculated. And then you want to scroll down a little bit further. It also tells you N, which is how many values we've got. You'll see here we have the median, and it tells the median is 4, which is what we also calculated. So you can actually put your data straight into your calculator and it will give you all the information you need. The only thing it doesn't tell you, remember, is the mode. Example 2, we've got each student in a class of 20 is assigned a number between 1 and 10 to indicate his or her fitness. The results are 7, 9, 8, 8, 10, 9, etc. Group the data in a table and then calculate the mean, median and mode. So it wants us to put the data into a table first and then go from there, and it'll be a frequency table, and then I can show you how to calculate your mean and median with that. So in our table we're going to have we need a heading for the score, we need a heading for the frequency, and we will need a third column as well, and I'll explain what the third column is in a second. Now if we look through the scores, we've got scores between 5 and 10. So we'll have 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 and 10. And then from here, we need to look at our frequencies. So how many 5s are there, how many 6s, etc. So if we look at that, you will find there is 1 5, 2 6s, 4 7s, 7 8s, 4 9s, and 2 10s. Now the other thing with this table is we're going to need some totals. So we're going to need to total this first column, which is 20. And what we also have to do when we have a frequency table is we need a last column, which is going to be the score times by the frequency. So basically column 1 times by column 2. So what I might actually do is I may change this to, if we call this one, column 2, we're going to do 1 times 2. So it's always what your score is or your data multiplied by the frequency. And if we do that, we're going to get 5 times 1, which is 5, 6 times 2, it's 12, 7 times 4, 28, 8 times 7 is 56, 9 times 4, 36, and 10 times 2 is 20. Then we want a total for that column as well, which is 157. So just as a sign note here, to work out your last column, it would be 5 times 1, 6 times 2, just so you can hopefully then see how we got those numbers. Now we have all the information we need to do our calculations. So the first for the mean. So the mean is X, we sometimes call it X bar as well, X with a line above it, equals the sum of all the X divided by N. So this is really easy now with this data table. The sum of all the X's is actually our third column. So the purple number of 157. 7 divided by our total, which was 20, which will give us a mean of 7.85. So now for the median, same idea, we want to find the position. So we know there's 20 bits of data, so it would be 20 plus 1 divided by 2. So we are looking for the 10.5 position. So the 10.5 position. So the easiest way to do this is look at your frequency column, the second one. And what we're going to do is we're going to find where the 10.5 position is. Now you can either start from the top or the bottom of the table, doesn't matter. I'm going to start from the top. If we look at the top, we start with one person here. Then we go down here, which is 2. So now we have a total of 3 people. Then we go down and we add the 4, which means we're going to get 7. Then we're going to add another 7, which means we get to 14. So we see that 10, the 10.5 will be between this 7 and 14, which means our median is in the 8 score. And we could do it the exact same way even if we start at the bottom of the frequency. So if we start at 2, We add up to the 4, which would be 6, add up to the 7, which would be 13. See, the 10th and a half position will be in the 8 bracket, so the median is 8. So now with the mode, we look at the one with the highest frequency. The highest frequency is 7, so our mode will be 8. Now we can also do frequency tables in our calculators, so I will show you how to do that now and show that we get the same mean and median. So on our calculators for this example, we're going to go to the table app again, the lists and spreadsheets, and when we input our data here, we need to input the score and the frequency. So our scores were 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So we'll go 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And then we need to input the frequencies. So it was 1, 2, 4, 7, 4, 2. So input the first and second columns from the table. Now we do the same steps now to get our information and our statistics. So we go menu, number 4, statistics, number 1, stat calculations. Now it's still only one variable, even though we've got 2 columns, one's just frequency, it is not a separate variable. So just one variable, so select that and OK for the number of lists. Now this is where we do something slightly different. So our X1 list, the list where our data is in column A. So we need to make sure that that says A. Now the next thing we have to change is we do have a frequency list now. Our column B is a frequency list. So what we need to do is we need to make that B and we need to put the square brackets. Now to do the square brackets on your calculator, hit Control, the blue button, and then hit the open brackets button. And it will give you square brackets. And then just make sure your results column isn't going to be in column A or B. Here we've got it in C, which works perfectly. And then click OK. And it brings up our data. So our mean, first one down, 7.85. You'll see it matches what we calculated. The sum of all the values is 157, which is what we also got. And then all the way down, our n is 20. Yep, we had 20 numbers. And then our median should be 8. So if you scroll a bit further down to our median, and you'll see it tells us our median is 8. And so that's how you use your calculator when you have a frequency table and statistics. Example 3, we've got Linda has taken 4 maths tests so far this year. Each test has been out of 20 marks and her average mark has been 15. What mark does Linda need in the 5th test to raise her average to 16? So there's a couple of steps we have to do to work this out, but we're still going to be using the mean formula, but we're going to need to rearrange it. So if we first look at the first bit of information, we know that each test has been out of 20 marks and her average was 15 and she's done 4 tests, which means we can work out for those 4 tests what her sum was. So we know to start with, her average was 15, so the mean equals 15, and we're trying to work out what the sum was, and it was out of 4 tests. So that means her sum, so you do 15 times 4 when we rearrange, had to have been 60 for her average to have been 15. Now if we think about it, she wants on her next test to make her average 16. So we know it's going to be 16 has to equal the sum of all the x values divided by how many tests, which will be 5. Now, the sum of all the values, this top half here, would be 60, which is the sum of the first 4 tests she did, plus the sum of the final test, divided by 5. Because we know the first 4 tests the sum was 60 because we found that over here. Now we just rearrange this. So we're going to have 16 times by 5, which is 80, minus 60. So she needs to get 20 out of 20 on her next test to be able to raise her average to 16. So she needs to get 4 marks. Okay, group data. So our last little bit here. So when we have group data, it's presented with the class intervals, as we said in the last lesson, and we can only make an estimate of the mean. So in this example, we've got the Transport Department collected data regarding the distance of its trams travelled in one day. This is shown in the table. Estimate the mean distance travelled by the trams. So we're going to do this by hand, but then we can also do it in our calculators, and we just do exactly the same as what we did before with the frequency table, but I'll just tell you which values you would put in instead. So for this, we need to draw up a table. And it's going to be the same as the first table, but we need to add 2 more columns to it. And I'll explain what they are in a second. So once we've got our frequency table, the first thing we have to do is find the midpoint. So that's going to be our next column. And what the midpoint is, it's the middle of the class intervals. So it's the middle of the 50 to 100. So halfway between 50 and 100 is 75. And now between 100 and 150, the midpoint is 125. Then we'll have 175 and 225. So it's the middle of these values here. So our final column, just like the last frequency table, is going to be our frequency multiplied by, this time we have to multiply it by our midpoint because we can't multiply it by class intervals. So the frequency multiplied by the midpoint. And if we do that, we'll get 10 times 75, which is 750. This one will be 1,875, 2,800, and then 2,025. And then we still need totals at the bottom. So we need a total for the frequency, which will be 50, and a total for the F times M, which will be 7,450. So from here then we just work out our mean. So we have our formula. But now our sum of all the values is our frequency times the midpoint divided by total frequency. So the mean, estimate of the mean will be 149 kilometers. And then if we wanted to do this in our graphics calculator, we just need to put in our midpoint and our frequency as our 2 lists. So the first column would be the midpoint, the second column will be the frequency, and then we calculate it just the same as we did in example 2.